The blood moon rises, the apocalypse descends, and my boyfriend awakens spatial powers. He looted supplies from the entire city, yet when my parents came begging for help, he coldly shut the door in their faces. He said, "My space can only hold enough rations for the two of us." Later, when he pushed me into a horde of zombies, I finally learned that within his space, capable of holding an entire building, he had also hidden his beloved white moonlight, opening my eyes again. I found myself back to the day before the apocalypse, watching my boyfriend enthusiastically placing orders online. I silently logged into his account and changed all the shipping addresses to the house next to mine. The excruciating pain of blades piercing flesh and claws tearing through bones still seemed branded deep within my soul. I suddenly opened my eyes, my heart pounding wildly as I gasped for breath. What met my eyes wasn't the bloodthirsty maw of a zombie, but the familiar ceiling. Bright light streamed through the gaps in the curtains, filling the air with a faint scent of lemon fragrance. I came back. "Sleep a little longer, baby. I'm just finishing up adding the last few items to the cart." A gentle male voice came from the living room. It was Janja. I turned my head stiffly and saw him sitting cross-legged on the carpet, the screen of his laptop glowing in front of him, his fingers flying across the keyboard. That handsome face, which had once captivated me so deeply, was now filled with excitement and focus. He was placing orders for the impending apocalypse, using his awakened spatial ability to frantically hoard supplies. In my past life, I was deceived by his seemingly affectionate demeanor. He said it was all for our future. He said his space was only 10 cubic meters, barely enough to hold rations for the two of us. I believed him. I scrimped and saved for him, comforting myself through hunger-induced dizziness that I must endure for our future. My parents risked their lives to come to us for help, but he coldly said through the door, "Sorry, uncle and aunt, supplies are limited. I can only ensure Ching and I survive." At the time, I was moved by his honesty and his favoritism toward me, crying as I persuaded my parents to leave. It wasn't until later, when he personally pushed me into a horde of zombies, that I saw, right before death, his enormous storage space, capable of holding an entire building, suddenly open wide before me. Beside the mountains of supplies stood his beloved Bayuiguan, Lin Weiwei, weeping pitifully. Jianjia held her in his arms, his voice softer than I'd ever heard before. "Don't be afraid, Weiwei. If we use her to distract the zombies, we can escape safely." Turns out, I wasn't his one and only, just livestock he'd been raising to save his own life at critical moments. And my parents, they starved to death on the run not long after I died. Overwhelming hatred nearly drowned me. I stared fixedly at Jiang's retreating figure, my nails digging deep into my palms. He was still there, adding bricks and mortar to his and Lin Weiwei's Doomsday fortress. "Baby, it's done, all taken care of." Jiangja closed his laptop and crawled toward me with a look begging for praise. "Now nothing can disturb our little world, even if the sky falls." He tried to kiss me, my stomach churned violently, and I turned my head away just a second before he could touch me. Jiangja froze mid-motion, looking puzzled. "What's wrong?" Suppressing the murderous glint in my eyes, I forced a weak smile. "Nothing, just feeling a bit dizzy." "Then lie down quickly." He immediately grew concerned, helping me settle back and even tucking in the blanket corners thoughtfully. "Rest well, I'll go make you breakfast." Watching his retreating figure enter the kitchen, the smile on my lips instantly froze. I picked up his laptop, its screen still lit, displaying the shopping website where he had just placed an order. The lengthy order list included everything from compressed biscuits and self-heating rice to medicine, weapons, tents, and generators. The string of zeros following the total amount sent a chill down my spine. He's really generous. I deftly entered his username and password, gaining access to the backend, in my past life, to help him manage these shared supplies. I had memorized this information by heart. Locating the shipping address field, that familiar string of characters stung my eyes. That was the address of his and Lin Weiwei's apocalyptic love nest. I took a deep breath, my fingers dancing across the keyboard, deleted, then entered a new address, the perpetually vacant villa next door to my house. After completing all this, I cleared all browsing history and traces of modification, returning the computer to its original position. Jiangja, in this lifetime, I hope you and your white moonlight can eat your fill, too. When Jiangja's breakfast was served, I was leaning against the headboard, calmly planning my doomsday list. "Sweetheart, try the love sandwich I made." He handed the plate to me, his eyes full of anticipation. Looking at the sandwich before me, I only felt a wave of nausea. In my previous life, it was by eating his so-called breakfast made with love and listening to his hypocritical sweet talk that I walked step by step into the death trap he had woven. "I don't have much appetite." I pushed the plate away, lifted the blanket, and got out of bed. "You can eat it yourself." Jiangja's smile froze on his face. "Ching, what's wrong with you? You've been acting strange since morning." Ignoring him, I walked straight into the walk-in closet and started packing my things. I packed every single thing he bought for me, clothes, bags, jewelry, into the suitcase without missing a single item. I find these things dirty. Ching ching. What are you doing? Jianja followed me in, grabbing my hand in panic. Aren't we doing fine? Why are you packing? Break up. I shook off his hand and uttered the two words, clear and cold. Jianja froze, as if he had just heard some outlandish tale. He snatched my suitcase away, flung it aside, and cornered me against the wall with reddened eyes. Why, Suqing, tell me why, what exactly did I do wrong? This wounded yet devoted look of his was identical to when he begged me not to break up with him in our previous life before rebirth. Back then, my heart softened, and I believed his words about being his only salvation. Then, the next second, the blood moon rose, his parents turned into zombies, and without hesitation, he pushed me out. Jianja, stop pretending, I said coldly. Staring at him, I'm done. He seemed stung, his voice trembling. 3 years of our relationship, and you're just done with it. I couldn't be bothered to argue anymore. Pushing him aside, I grabbed my phone and car keys and walked out. Suqing, Jianja hugged me tightly from behind, burying his head in the crook of my neck, his voice choked with tears. Don't go. Please don't go. I can't live without you. How disgusting. Summoning all my strength, I broke free from his embrace and rushed out of that suffocating house without looking back. Behind me, his hysterical screams echoed, but I couldn't even be bothered to turn my head. Once inside the car, I immediately called my parents. Dad, Mom, go withdraw all the cash and savings from home right now, as much as you can. On the other end of the phone, my mom was confused by my abrupt words. Ching, what's going on? Did you and his have a fight? There's no time to explain, just trust me and do as I say, then go to the biggest supermarket and buy rice, flour, canned food, water, the more, the better. Remember, go straight home after shopping, lock the doors and windows, and don't open them for anyone. My tone was too urgent and serious. Though puzzled, my parents agreed to do as I said. After hanging up the phone, I floored the accelerator and drove straight toward the largest gold store in the city center. In the apocalypse of my previous life, money quickly became worthless, and the real hard currency was gold. I maxed out all my credit cards and even mortgaged my small apartment to exchange for a suitcase full of gold bars. After completing all this, I didn't pause for a moment and immediately drove to a large warehouse-style building materials market in the suburbs. Steel plates, solar power equipment, water circulation filtration systems, anti-theft doors and windows. With the remaining money, I ordered every reinforcement and survival supply I could get my hands on, all delivered to my home address. Time was of the essence. I had to transform my house into an impregnable fortress before the blood moon rose. 3. By the time I drove home in a truck loaded with supplies, the sky had already begun to darken. My parents were anxiously waiting at the door and immediately came forward when they saw me. Ching. What on earth is going on? First withdrawing money, then buying things, and now bringing back such a big truck. My mother looked at the truck full of items, her face filled with worry. Dad, Mom, let's go inside first. I directed the workers to move the construction materials and equipment into the house, quickly paid the remaining balance, and sent them on their way. The moment the door closed, it felt like all the strength drained from my body. I leaned against the door, gasping for breath. Ching. You and Jianja, we broke up. I cut off my dad's words, looking up at them with unwavering determination in my eyes. Dad, Mom, what I'm about to say next might sound absurd, but please believe me. I told them about the prophecy of the impending apocalypse that I'd heard from Jianja. Of course, I omitted the fact that I had been reborn, only saying that Jianja had obtained the information from some secret source. After hearing this, my parents' faces were filled with shock and disbelief. Ching, isn't this too exaggerated? Blood moon? Zombies. My mother's voice trembled slightly. Better to believe it exists than to assume it doesn't, my father said with an extremely grave expression. After a moment of silence, he looked at me and asked, Ching, are you sure the source of this information is reliable? I'm certain, I said decisively. Jianja has already used all his assets to stockpile supplies, precisely to prepare for this disaster. Hearing this, my parents' last trace of doubt vanished. They knew Jianja came from a wealthy family. If he was willing to stake his entire fortune, then this matter was almost certainly true. What should we do now? My mother panicked. Don't be afraid. I held her hand, forcing myself to stay calm. From now on, we'll reinforce the doors and windows, stock up on food and water, and wait for rescue. Remember, no matter what happens outside, don't open the door. For the next few hours, all three of us worked together. We sealed all doors and windows with steel plates, leaving only small observation ports, installed solar generators and a water recycling system, move all the food and water to the basement. By the time we finished all the work, the sky outside the window had completely darkened. A strange, blood-red moon hung high in the sky, emitting ominous light. "It's here," almost simultaneously. Piercing screams and shrill alarms began to echo from every corner of the city. I walked to the window sealed shut with steel plates and peered outside through the small observation hole. The street was in complete chaos. People were running wildly in all directions, and behind them were some staggering, grotesque-looking people. Those people pounced on the living, biting and tearing at them frantically. The bitten person, after a brief convulsion, will stand up again, their pupils turning gray-white, joining the ranks of the predators. Zombies, they've really appeared. My mom covered her mouth, too frightened to speak. My dad's face also turned deathly pale, although I had anticipated it. Seeing this hellish scene with my own eyes still made my heart clench uncontrollably. At that very moment, my phone started ringing frantically. It was Jiangja. I swiped to answer, but before I could speak, I heard his terrified, hysterical cries, "Ching-ching, ching-ching, save me, there are monsters everywhere outside." "I'm so scared. Where are you?" I asked coldly. "I'm at our home." "No, downstairs at your place. I came looking for you." "Ching-ching, open the door quickly and let me in." I walked to the peephole and indeed saw Jiangja standing downstairs at our unit, desperately dodging a few wandering zombies. Beside him stood a trembling woman. "It's Lin Weiwei." The two of them looked utterly disheveled, their faces covered in dust and fear. It seems they must have gone to that love nest, only to find it completely empty, too afraid to stay outside any longer. They had no choice but to come running to me for help. "Ching-ching, can you hear me? Open the door quickly." Jiangja's voice was choked with sobs. "It's too dangerous out here." "Jiangja," I said into the phone, enunciating each word clearly, "my space can only hold rations for the two of us." On the other end of the line, Jiangja's voice abruptly cut off. "For Su-ching, what do you mean by that?" After a brief, deathly silence, Jiangja's roar erupted from the phone. Filled with furious disbelief, "It means exactly what it says." I walked to the window and peered through the observation port, watching the doomed couple downstairs with great interest. "Didn't you say your space was very small and could only protect me? Well, now my house is also very small, just enough for our family of three." You knew all along." Jiangja's voice was filled with disbelief. "Indeed," I chuckled lightly. "Not only do I know about your space that can fit an entire building, but I also know who's standing beside you." "What's the matter? Did your white moonlight have nowhere else to go?" "Downstairs." Jiangja stared incredulously at his phone, then looked up at my window. His face turned from pale to ashen, and finally darkened with rage. Lin Weiwei beside him seemed to have overheard our conversation as well. She tugged at Jiangja's arm, urgently asking him something. "Su-ching, you bitch, you set me up." Jiangja finally snapped out of his daze, yelling curses into the phone. "Where are the supplies? What did you do with my supplies?" "Your supplies?" The delivery address clearly had my name on it. I replied leisurely, "Oh wait. No, it was actually my neighbor's address. You should go check it out. You might get a surprise." With that, I hung up the call and promptly blocked his number. The world instantly became quiet. "Ching-ching, what was that just now?" my dad asked with some concern. "It's nothing, just someone unimportant." I turned around and gave my parents a reassuring smile. "Dad, Mom, let's eat." I brought out a self-heating hot pot from the basement. The rich aroma of beef tallow quickly filled the enclosed room. Outside the window was a living hell, with endless roars and screams piercing the air, yet the three of us sat gathered around the table, enjoying a steaming hot pot. This feeling was like a lifetime apart. In my past life, at this very moment, I had been hiding with Jiangja and Lin Weiwei in their well-stocked love nest. Jiangja shielded Lin Weiwei in his arms, feeding her expensive imported beef canned food. As for me, I could only get a small piece of compressed biscuit and half a bottle of water. I was so hungry that I felt dizzy, yet I still had to smile and say to him, "I'm not hungry, you eat more." "No, the tables have turned." I picked up a slice of fatty beef, swished it in the boiling broth, then stuffed it into my mouth, squinting blissfully. "It smells wonderful." Downstairs, Jiangja and Lin Weiwei clearly had the same thought about the neighboring villa. They rushed desperately toward the pitch-black house, pounding on the door frantically. The villa had been vacant for years, so naturally, no one would answer the door for them. Their movements quickly attracted the wandering zombies nearby. Several zombies growled and staggered toward them, lunging clumsily. Lin Weiwei let out a piercing scream, her legs going weak with fear. Jiangja, after all, had awakened spatial abilities. Though panicked, He swiftly retrieved a fire axe from his space and swung it wildly, hacking down the two zombies charging at the front. But after all, he was just a spoiled rich kid, and his stamina quickly gave out. As more and more zombies closed in, he dragged Lin Weiwei and scrambled back into the hallway of our apartment building, narrowly escaping danger for the moment. But the hallway wasn't completely safe either. Residents trapped inside the building kept turning into zombies and bursting out of their doors. The entire apartment building had turned into a bloody hunting ground. Jiangzhe and Lin Weiwei were in imminent danger. I finished the last bite of fatty beef and wiped my mouth contentedly. The real show has just begun. Paywall 5. For the next 2 days, Jiangzhe and Lin Weiwei remained trapped in the hallway. They hid behind the fire hydrant on the first floor, not daring to make a sound. Food and water had run out, and hunger and fear, like two venomous snakes, gnawed away at their last shreds of sanity. Occasionally, I would peer through the peephole to observe their miserable state. Lin Weiwei was already emaciated from starvation, her lips cracked, her gaze vacant, as she whimpered softly and complained incessantly about Jiangzhe's uselessness. Jiangzhe wasn't doing much better either. He clung desperately to that fire axe, his eyes fixed warily on the stairwell. He had lost a significant amount of weight, his eye sockets sunken deep, looking as if he might collapse at any moment. They must be starving. With that thought, I took a roasted chicken from the fridge and popped it into the microwave for a quick heat. Then, I turned on the exhaust fan in the living room. The rich aroma of roasted chicken wafted through the door crack, precisely finding its way into the nostrils of every starving survivor. And zombie, in the hallway, gurgle. I clearly heard the sound of swallowing saliva rising and falling in waves throughout the hallway. I also heard the zombies growling more restlessly, drawn by the enticing scent of food. It's the smell of food. Lin Weiwei seemed to have a sudden surge of energy, her eyes bursting with astonishing brightness as she tightly gripped Jiangzhe's arm. Asia, it's food. I smell roast chicken. Jiangzhe smelled it too. He abruptly looked up, his gaze fixed on my tightly shut security door. Filled with greed and venom, Su Qing, he muttered my name through gritted teeth. Asia, go beg her, go ask her to give us some food. Lin Weiwei pleaded tearfully. If this goes on, we'll all starve to death. A trace of struggle flashed across Jiangzhe's face. Asking for help from the woman he had abandoned and schemed against was something his pride wouldn't allow, but the aroma of the roasted chicken was simply too overpowering. He hadn't eaten for 2 days, and his stomach felt as hollow as if it were on fire. In the end, physical craving triumphed over pitiful pride. Leaning against the wall, he staggered to his feet and walked to my doorstep. Knock, knock, knock. He rapped on my door. I slowly tore off a chicken leg and walked to the door, watching him through the peephole. Ching ching. His voice was hoarse and weak. I know I was wrong. Please open the door and give me and Weiwei something to eat. We're starving. Please. Ching ching. For the sake of our past relationship, he began to play the victim, trying to move me with memories of our past. Unfortunately, I'm no longer that love-struck fool from my past life. I deliberately held the chicken leg up to my mouth, took a big bite right by the peephole, and made loud, satisfied chewing sounds. Outside the door, Jiangzhe's Adam's apple bobbed frantically. Master Su, may I exchange all my gold for just a bit of your food? An unfamiliar male voice suddenly came from beside me. I froze for a moment and peered through the peephole. Across the hallway, my neighbor, a seemingly refined man, was leaning against his door, holding up a gold watch with eager eyes fixed on my doorway. The corridor wasn't just occupied by Jiangzhe and his group, other survivors were there too. They had all been lured out by the tantalizing aroma of roasted chicken. I've got jewelry here. I'll trade my wife. She's very beautiful. In the face of hunger, the ugliest side of human nature is laid bare. Jiangzhe's expression turned extremely grim at the sight of this scene. He never expected that before he could even beg for food, he would first attract a swarm of competitors. Get lost, all of you, get lost. He brandished a fire axe, shouting fiercely yet timidly at the others. This is mine. Su Qing is my girlfriend. Her things belong to me. These words successfully enraged the other survivors. Who says so? It's the apocalypse now, might makes right. What the hell are you, pretty boy? A burly man wielding a crowbar stood his ground fearlessly, confronting him head-on. The tension in the hallway was growing increasingly palpable. The smile on my lips grew deeper. Jiangzhe, don't you love playing the savior? Now, let's see how it feels to be coveted by everyone. I opened a small delivery slot on the door and tossed out the leftover chicken bones. Here's your reward, instantly. Everyone's eyes in the hallway turned red with greed. They lunged forward like a pack of starved wild dogs, scrambling for those few bones with scraps of meat still clinging to them. In their frenzy to grab them, they began fighting viciously, shoving, cursing, and tearing at each other. Jiangzhe was also drawn into this chaotic battle. Although he possessed supernatural abilities and weapons, he was quickly overpowered and kicked to the ground by the burly man. After all, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. The fire axe slipped from his grasp. Amidst the chaos, someone accidentally knocked open the door of a house. Inside that house, a freshly turned zombie caught the scent of fresh flesh and charged out with a roar. "Ah, zombie!" The crowd instantly erupted into panic, scattering in all directions. The zombie sank its teeth into the neck of the nearest burly man. The man let out a blood-curdling scream, collapsing to the ground as his body convulsed violently. Meanwhile, Jiangzhi and Lin Weiwei took advantage of the chaos to hide behind a fire hydrant, trembling with fear, and thus began a bloody massacre triggered by a mere chicken bone. I closed the delivery chute, shutting out the screams and chaos outside, and went back contentedly to gnawing on my roast chicken. 6. The chaos in the hallway lasted for a long time. In the end, after sacrificing several lives, the survivors finally managed to work together to eliminate that zombie. Along with a few unlucky souls who had been turned, after this battle, they were severely weakened and no longer dared to gather recklessly outside my door. Jiangzhi and Lin Weiwei thus gained a moment of peace, but the problem of hunger remained unresolved. On the 3rd night, I was startled awake by a faint noise. I silently walked to the door and peered outside through the peephole. Jiangzhi was seen holding a piece of wire, furtively fiddling with the lock on my door. He actually wanted to pick the lock. I sneered coldly. My door was a top-grade anti-theft door I had specially installed before the apocalypse. Forget a mere wire, even an electric drill might not easily open it. He struggled with it for a long time, but the lock didn't budge an inch. Instead, his nervousness caused quite a commotion. "Aja, hurry up!" Lin Weiwei hid behind, urging anxiously. "Shut up!" Jiangzhi growled through clenched teeth, his forehead covered in cold sweat. At that moment, dragging footsteps echoed from the staircase above. A zombie clad in security guard uniform, drawn by the commotion, was lumbering down step by step. Jiangzhi and Lin Weiwei's faces instantly turned deathly pale. Jiangzhi's hand trembled, and the iron wire fell to the ground. He wanted to retrieve his fire axe, but the axe was placed beside a fire hydrant several meters away. It was already too late. As the zombies drew nearer, the putrid stench assaulted their senses. Lin Weiwei let out a desperate scream. A flash of ruthlessness crossed Jiangzhi's eyes. 1 second before the zombie lunged, he did exactly what I expected. He grabbed Lin Weiwei beside him and pushed her toward the zombie without hesitation. "Weiwei, I'm sorry." Lin Weiwei didn't even have time to react before the zombie pounced on her, knocking her to the ground. Sharp teeth instantly pierced her slender neck. "No." Her eyes widened in disbelief as she stared at Jiangzhi. Gurgling sounds escaping her throat while blood gushed from the corner of her mouth. Until her dying breath, she never imagined that the man who swore he loved her and would protect her for a lifetime would be the one to personally push her into hell. What a strikingly similar scene. In my previous life, I too was discarded by him like a pawn, thrown toward his zombie-infected parents, without a shred of hesitation. Jiangzhi seized the moment while the zombies were devouring Lin Weiwei, scrambling frantically to pick up the fire axe before bolting upstairs without looking back. Disappearing around the stairwell corner, he didn't even glance at Lin Weiwei again. This was his so-called love until death. How ridiculous. Lin Weiwei soon stopped struggling. After a brief deathly silence, her eyes suddenly snapped open, those pale gray pupils signaling she had become one of those monsters. She stood up and began wandering aimlessly through the hallway with the security guard zombie. I closed the peephole, feeling no ripple of emotion in my heart. Every villain meets his match. This was their retribution. 7. Having dealt with Lin Weiwei, the burden, and temporarily relieved the threat of hunger by feeding on his companion, Jiangzhi seemed to regain some vitality, but he didn't stop there. I know he must be plotting something. Sure enough, the next day, noisy voices came from downstairs. I walked to the observation port and saw Jiangzhi standing in front of a group of survivors, speaking passionately. Around him gathered more than a dozen men, each holding various makeshift weapons, crowbars, wrenches, kitchen knives. That woman is Su Qing. She's hoarding supplies that should belong to all of us, a whole villa's worth of food and water, enough to keep us all alive until rescue arrives. If we charge in, we can survive. We'll never have to go hungry again. Jiangzhi's inflammatory words instantly ignited the starving survivors, their eyes burning with desperation. They raised their weapons high, howling like a pack of frenzied madmen pumped full of adrenaline. Jiangzhi is very clever. He knows that alone he cannot breach my defenses, so he chose to incite the crowd. He portrayed himself as a pitiable victim of betrayal, while I became the selfish villain hoarding supplies. In the face of life and death, morality and truth seem powerless. They just want to survive. And the supplies in my home represent their hope for survival. Charge, take all her belongings. Led by Jiangzhe, the crowd surged toward our building like a tidal wave. Ching ching. My parents turned pale as they watched the frenzied crowd below. Don't be afraid. I patted their hands, my eyes icy cold. Jiangzhe, do you really think you can succeed like this? Too naive. I walked up to the console and pressed a few buttons. The electrified anti-theft door I had specially modified, installed at the entrance of the apartment building, instantly surged with high voltage. The few people charging at the front collapsed to the ground, convulsing and foaming at the mouth the moment they touched the door. The people behind immediately halted in fear, not daring to take another step forward. Damn it, this door's electrified. Jiangzhe, didn't you say she was just an ordinary woman? Someone roared at Jiangzhe. Jiangzhe's face also turned grim. He hadn't expected me to have this trick up my sleeve. Don't panic, it's just an electric gate. Let's figure out how to cut its power, Jiangzhe commanded, forcing himself to stay calm. They began searching downstairs for the circuit breaker. But my home's power supply system was independent solar energy. They couldn't find it at all. After struggling for a long time with no results, their loud commotion instead attracted more zombies. Watching them downstairs struggling with zombies and electric gates, I took out my phone and dialed a number. It was the contact information for a survivor base I had accidentally learned about during my escape in my previous life. The person in charge of the base was a decisive retired soldier surnamed Chin. The call was quickly answered. Hello, a steady male voice came through. Captain Chin. I got straight to the point. My name is Su Qing. I have a large amount of supplies, medicine, food, water, and power generation equipment. I'd like to make a deal with you. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Where are you located, and what do you need from us? I'm at Starlight Residential Complex in the west of the city. I don't need anything from you. I only have one condition. I glanced at the figure downstairs, still jumping around and trying to stir up trouble, and curled my lips into a cold smile. Help me kill someone. 8. Captain Chin was highly efficient. In less than half an hour, 3 modified armored off-road vehicles appeared at the entrance of the residential complex. Over a dozen fully armed soldiers jumped out of the vehicles, well-trained and swift in their movements. They quickly cleared the zombies at the complex's entrance and established a temporary defensive line downstairs. Jiangzhe and that ragtag bunch were completely stunned by the sudden appearance of these elite soldiers who seemed to have descended from the heavens. They stood frozen in place, utterly at a loss. A man who appeared to be the leader strode boldly to the front of the crowd, his gaze sharp as lightning as he coldly swept his eyes over them. It was Captain Chin. Who is Jiangzhe? He asked in a deep voice. All eyes turned uniformly toward Jiangzhe. Jiangzhe's face instantly drained of color as he stammered. May I ask, who are you? We're here on a mission. Captain Chin cut straight to the point, gesturing to the soldiers behind him without wasting words. Take him into custody. 2 soldiers immediately stepped forward, seizing Jiangzhe's arms from either side. Wait, what right do you have to arrest me? What crime have I committed? Jiangzhe struggled frantically. Did Su Qing send you? What benefits did that bitch offer you? Let me tell you, she's the real villain. She hoarded massive amounts of supplies and refused to help those in need. Captain Chin glanced at him with a hint of disgust flashing in his eyes as he watched Jiangzhe's hysterical outburst. Ignoring Jiangzhe's shouts, he instead looked up toward the windows of my home. I deactivated the electric gate's shock function and opened the door. The sunlight streaming in through the doorway was a bit blinding. I squinted my eyes and locked gazes with Captain Chin standing at the entrance. He appeared to be around 40 years old, tall and sturdy, with resolute features and eyes as sharp as a blade. So you're Su Qing? He asked. I nodded. Is this the man you want us to kill? He pointed at Jiangzhe, who was being held firmly. Yes. Upon hearing my words, Jiangzhe went berserk, struggling even more violently. Su Qing, you venomous woman. You'll die a horrible death. I'll haunt you even as a ghost. His curses were shrill and unpleasant. Captain Chin frowned and gave a meaningful glance to the soldiers beside him. A soldier immediately gagged Jiangzhe with a torn piece of cloth. The world was finally quiet again. Reason. Captain Chin looked at me, his words concise. He wanted to kill me and steal my belongings. I replied calmly. In this apocalyptic world, that reason was sufficient. Captain Chin gave me a deep look, as if assessing the truthfulness of my words. After a moment, he nodded. Fine, but we have rules. We can't execute survivors arbitrarily, unless he's infected. I understand. He was asking me to give him a legitimate reason. I walked up to Jiangzhe, looked into his eyes filled with venom and fear, and smiled. Do you know, Jiangzhe, in my past life, when you pushed me into the horde of zombies, I didn't die immediately. Jiangzhe's pupils contracted sharply. I leaned down and whispered into his ear, in a voice only the two of us could hear. I was torn apart until I was a bloody mess, but my consciousness remained eerily clear. I could distinctly feel a cold power seeping into my body through the wounds. It was a strange sensation, like rebirth, I said, raising my hand, my nails turning pitch black and razor sharp in an instant. This was an ability I discovered only after my rebirth. I had been infected, yet I didn't turn into a mindless zombie. Instead, I retained my human consciousness and gained the power to control lower-tier zombies. I am the true, future zombie emperor. Jiangxia widened his eyes in terror, whimpering sounds escaping his mouth as his body trembled violently from fear. I paid no heed to his fear, my sharp fingernail lightly tracing a line across his arm. A fine wound appeared, and a drop of black blood from my fingertip seeped into his injury. Having done this, I withdrew my hand, my fingernail returning to its normal state. I straightened up and said to Captain Shin, "He's been scratched by a zombie and has already started turning." All eyes were fixed on Jiangxia's arm. The small wound was visibly turning black and rotting at a rapid pace. Black veins, like venomous snakes, were creeping upward along his blood vessels. Jiangxia's body began to convulse violently, emitting inhuman guttural sounds from his throat. His pupils gradually turned into the characteristic grayish-white color of zombies. Bang! A gunshot rang out. Captain Shin holstered his still-smoking gun and said expressionlessly, "The target has been infected. Elimination complete." A bloody hole appeared between Jiangxia's eyebrows. His eyes widened as he stiffly collapsed to the ground, until his dying breath. He couldn't comprehend why I would also. I gazed at his corpse with complete tranquility in my heart. "Jiangxia, in this lifetime, I won't just strip you of everything, I'll make you experience becoming a monster too." Vengeance was served. 9. After dealing with Jiangxia, Captain Shin kept his promise and personally escorted my supplies and my parents to their survivor base. Along the way, seeing the devastated city and zombies everywhere, my parents were filled with lingering fear and became even more obedient to me. They finally understood how right all my actions had been. The survivor base was established in a suburban prison that was easy to defend but hard to attack, high walls and electric fences. The fortifications were extremely well prepared. When we arrived driving trucks loaded with supplies, we were warmly welcomed by all the survivors in the base. In the post-apocalyptic world, food and medicine are the most precious treasures. I donated most of the supplies, keeping only enough for our family of 3 to live on. Securing a safe and comfortable single room in the base for myself and my parents, along with ample respect, Captain Shin greatly admired my generosity and decisiveness, even inviting me to join the base's management team. I didn't refuse. In this apocalyptic world, to live safely and securely, one must possess sufficient influence. With my exceptionally calm mind and foresight of the future, I quickly established myself within the base. I guided survivors in reinforcing defenses, searching for supplies, and establishing small-scale plantations and livestock farms, gradually bringing the base's life back on track. My reputation grows higher with each passing day. My parents have also found their own roles at the base. My mother helps out in the kitchen, while my father works with the engineering team, responsible for repairing and reinforcing the base. Seeing them regain hope in life fills me with genuine happiness. Everything seems to be moving in a positive direction. But I know the real crisis hasn't arrived yet. As time passes, the zombies outside will continue to evolve. They will become faster, stronger, and may even develop intelligence. Meanwhile, among the survivors, more and more people will awaken various supernatural abilities. The laws of the apocalypse are only just beginning to reveal themselves. One day, Captain Shin came to find me. "One of our search teams has lost contact at the central hospital in the west of the city," he said with a grave expression. "That's the epicenter of the virus outbreak, extremely dangerous, but the hospital has the antibiotics and surgical equipment we desperately need. You want me to go?" I asked. "No, I can't let you take the risk." Captain Shin shook his head. "You're the brains of the base, we can't afford to lose you, but I need your help analyzing what they might have encountered and how we can rescue them." He handed me a map. I stared at the location of Central Hospital on the map, lost in thought. In my previous life, I had never been there, but I know that 1 month after the outbreak of the apocalypse, there will be a massive horde of zombies that will sweep through the entire city, and the center of the zombie horde is the western part of the city, because that's where the first evolved zombie, the speed-type zombie, was born. It possesses speed comparable to a cheetah and astonishing jumping ability, making it nearly impossible to hit with ordinary firearms. The search team lost contact. Most likely, they encountered it. The situation might be worse than we imagined. I pointed to a spot on the map. If I'm not mistaken, they're probably trapped on the top floor of the inpatient building, and the entire structure might now be surrounded by a new type of zombie. I described the characteristics of the speed-type zombies in detail to Captain Shin. After hearing this, Captain Chen's expression turned unusually grim. If what you say is true, then this rescue mission will be extremely difficult. A direct assault is definitely not an option. I shook my head. We must outsmart them. As I studied the map, a bold plan began to take shape in my mind. Captain Chen, I'll take command of this rescue operation. I raised my head and looked at him with determination in my eyes. I have a way to minimize casualties. 10. My plan is simple, yet risky. Lure the snake out of its hole. Since that speed-type zombie is the key, we'll lure it out and focus our firepower to take it down. Once we deal with it, the remaining ordinary zombies won't be much of a threat, and the bait responsible for luring it is me. No, this is too dangerous. Captain Chen was the first to object. I'm the only one who can do it. I looked at him, my tone leaving no room for doubt. You've all seen my abilities. I can blend in with the zombie horde without being detected. None of you can do that. Apart from Captain Chen, no one in the base knew about my abilities. They only knew I could identify the zombies' weaknesses, but they didn't know I could command them. Captain Chen fell silent. He knew I was telling the truth. In the end, he still agreed to my plan. The operation was scheduled for the early hours of the next morning. I took only one person with me, Afei, the best sniper in the base. We drove to the vicinity of the central hospital, where I instructed Afei to set up a sniper position on the opposite high-rise, ready to provide support at any moment. As for me, I walked alone toward the inpatient building shrouded in an aura of death. The building was eerily silent, the air thick with the heavy stench of blood and decay. I tread lightly, cautiously moving inward. At the same time, I extended my mental energy, sensing the distribution of zombies around me. The entire building was practically overrun by zombies. They stand quietly in every corner like sculptures, as if waiting for some command. My heart tightened. It seems that the speed-type zombie has already developed preliminary intelligence capable of commanding other zombies. I suppressed my aura, making myself appear no different from an ordinary zombie. Then, step by step, I began making my way toward the top floor of the inpatient building. The higher I went, the denser the zombies became. When I reached the stairwell on the top floor, I saw the trapped search team. There were 7 or 8 of them, standing back to back, cornered in a room, desperately holding the door shut with hospital beds and cabinets. Desperation and exhaustion were written on every face. Outside their door, hundreds of zombies were densely packed. At the forefront of the zombie horde stood a figure that stood out from the rest. It was about the same height as an ordinary person, but its limbs were unusually elongated, its muscles knotted, and its nails pitch black and razor sharp. Its eyes were deep red, brimming with violence and intelligence. Speed-type zombie. It seemed to sense my presence too, its deep red eyes suddenly locking onto me. The moment our gazes met, I felt an overwhelming mental pressure rushing toward me. This was the absolute suppression that a high-level zombie exerts over a lower-level one. If it were an ordinary zombie, it would probably be kneeling in submission by now. But I'm not. I snorted coldly, mustering all my mental energy and fiercely counterattacked. Boom! 2 invisible waves of mental energy collided midair, producing a dull thud. The speed-type zombie staggered slightly, taking half a step back, its crimson eyes revealing shock and wariness for the first time. It hadn't expected the seemingly ordinary peer to resist its oppressive aura. As for me, I wasn't faring much better either. My face paled slightly as a surge of energy churned violently in my chest. The speed-type zombie's strength far exceeded my expectations. It seemed enraged by my provocation, letting out a sharp screech from its throat. All the surrounding zombies, as if receiving a command, instantly became frenzied and began violently pounding on the door where the search team was hiding. The already strained door groaned ominously, on the verge of being smashed open. I know. I can't wait any longer. I must lure it away immediately. I turned and ran, simultaneously sending a provocative signal towards it with my mental energy. Roar. The speed-type zombie indeed took the bait. With a furious roar, it abandoned the prey right before its eyes and transformed into a black lightning bolt, charging straight toward me. It's way too fast. I ran with all my might, the fierce wind behind me scraping painfully against my cheeks. I didn't dare look back, only desperately sprinting toward the predetermined destination, the rooftop. Once on the rooftop, Afei's sniper rifle could lock onto it. The rooftop door was right in front of me. With a flying leap, I crashed through the door and rolled outside. Just as I was getting up, a black shadow descended from above, slamming me hard to the ground. It's that speed-type zombie. It pinned me down firmly beneath it, its sharp claws pressing against my throat, its crimson eyes filled with mockery and cruelty. It was enjoying the cat-and-mouse game. Bang! A gunshot rang out. A bullet precisely struck the shoulder of the speed-type zombie. It's Afei. The speed-type zombie roared in pain, but it didn't release me. Instead, it tightened its grip with its claws. My throat was slashed, and blood began to flow. Bang! Bang! 2 more shots followed, hitting its thigh and abdomen respectively, yet these wounds didn't seem fatal to it. It only grew more furious. It opened its bloodthirsty maw and viciously bit down toward my neck. My pupils constricted. 1 second before its fangs sank in, I abandoned all resistance, allowing the primordial power of the zombie emperor within me to erupt completely. My eyes instantly turned the same deep crimson as its own. My fingernails grew sharper than its claws, a pressure 100 times stronger than its own, emanating from the depths of its bloodline, descended abruptly, the delivery-type zombie, poised to strike. Froze mid-motion, its crimson eyes revealed unprecedented fear and submission. It sensed the overwhelming pressure, the aura of royalty. It trembled before me, slowly lowering its proud head. I raised my hand and stroked its black-streaked cheek, as if soothing a pet. Then, in the moment it completely let down its guard, my sharp nails pierced its skull without hesitation. The battle was over. I stood up, looking down at the corpse of this evolved zombie, wiping the blood from my hands. A Fae in the distance was completely stunned. I gave him a done gesture, then turned around to face the horde of zombies behind me. Now bewildered and leaderless, I spread my arms wide, like a true queen. From now on, I said, I am your king. All the zombies bowed down towards me. 11. I returned to the base with an entire building's worth of zombies. When I appeared at the base entrance, everyone was stunned. They looked at the massive and silent zombie army behind me, so terrified they could barely hold their weapons steady. Su Ching. Captain Chen stared at me, his voice trembling. Don't be afraid. I walked up to him and said calmly, they obey me now. To prove my point, I casually pointed at one zombie and commanded it to take a step forward. The zombie obediently took a step forward. I then commanded it to turn around. It dutifully spun in a circle. Everyone in the base gasped in shock. Their gazes upon me shifted from shock to awe, and finally to fanaticism. In the apocalypse, possessing such an absolutely obedient zombie army speaks for itself. Its implications are self-evident. I became the god of the base. I didn't explain where my abilities came from, and they dared not ask. They only need to know that I can protect them. That's enough. Under my command, the zombie army became the strongest shield and sharpest spear of the base. They were responsible for patrolling and guarding the base, clearing out wandering zombies in the vicinity, and even serving as fearless porters during supply runs. The base's development progressed by leaps and bounds. We gathered more and more survivors, expanded our base, and established a stable order. In my memory, the 3rd month of the apocalypse would see the first large-scale outbreak of zombie hordes. It was a disaster that swept through half the city, leading to the downfall of countless survivor bases. But now, with my zombie army, I believe we can survive it safely. I began preparing in advance, reinforcing the city walls, stockpiling ammunition, training soldiers, and drilling tactics. The entire base operated like a precision war machine, running at full speed. As days passed, the tension in the air grew increasingly palpable. At last, the prophesied day has arrived. A piercing alarm echoed throughout the base. The soldier on the watchtower reported in a trembling voice, Zombies, a horde of zombies. An endless horde of zombies. I climbed onto the city wall and gazed into the distance. A black tide appeared on the horizon. It was a torrent composed of tens of thousands of zombies, roaring and surging, sweeping toward our base. The apocalyptic momentum was enough to break any sane person, but I didn't. I gazed at that black ocean with calm eyes, even a hint of excitement. I turned around and looked at the soldiers and survivors behind me, their faces pale and limbs trembling. I drew the long sword at my waist and pointed it into the distance, my voice echoing through every corner of the base. My people, do not be afraid. Today, let them see who truly owns this land. At my command, my zombie army roared and surged from the other side of the base, charging toward the incoming horde. A black tide collided violently with another black tide. A war belonging to the undead erupted, and we, standing atop the city walls, only needed to enjoy this grand spectacle of carnage. 12. The battle lasted an entire day and night. My zombie army displayed astonishing combat prowess. Under the enhancement of my psychic power and command, they fought fearlessly with seamless coordination, like a massive meat grinder, voraciously reducing the horde's numbers. The base soldiers transitioned from initial terror to numbness, and finally to exhilaration. They only needed to stand on the city walls and take precise shots at those who slipped through the net. This was the easiest battle they had ever experienced. When the sun rose the next day, the tide of corpses finally receded. Outside the base, corpses littered the ground, piled up like mountains. The air was filled with a nauseating stench, yet on the faces of all the survivors, there was an overwhelming joy and fervor of having narrowly escaped death. They shouted my name, their voices shaking the heavens. Su Huang, Su Huang. At that moment, standing atop the city wall, bathed in the morning light and the adoration of everyone, I truly felt what power was. After this battle, my base became the strongest force amidst these ruins. Countless survivors came seeking refuge, drawn by reputation. I also took in several small bases that had been overrun by the zombie horde. The leader of one of the bases showed a shocked expression when he saw me. You're Su Qing. I looked at him, feeling somewhat familiar but couldn't recall immediately. We've met before, he said excitedly, right when the apocalypse first broke out, at Starlight Community, downstairs from your place. I was that burly guy with the crowbar. It just occurred to me, so it was him. He looked much older and more haggard than before. You're still alive, I said flatly. Yeah, I was lucky to survive. He let out a bitter laugh. After that day, most of us died. That bastard Jiangzhu ran away too. The few of us who survived formed a small base, but who would have thought? We still couldn't hold out. He looked at me, his eyes filled with awe and emotion. I never would have imagined that the woman we once saw as easy prey has now become the ruler of this region. Empress Su, I'm convinced. From now on, my life is yours. I nodded slightly, saying nothing more, for him. This might have been a miraculous encounter, but to me, this was just a trivial episode. My gaze had long since moved beyond this small city. I knew that a broader world awaited me, with more formidable enemies and more enticing prey. For example, that man from my previous life who unified the entire South and proclaimed himself the Flame Emperor. He possesses the most powerful fire-based supernatural ability, capable of burning mountains and boiling seas, unmatched by anyone in my previous life. He was the only one who made me feel wary. In this life, I really want to meet him. Let's see if his flames burn brighter or if my zombie army prevails. 13. After fully consolidating my dominance in the city, I began executing my expansion plan. I dispatched several mixed reconnaissance teams composed of humans and zombies to explore surrounding cities, gather intelligence, search for other survivor bases, and track down that man's trail. Soon, news came back. 300 kilometers to the south in Linjiang City, a survivor base named Blazing Flame had rapidly risen to prominence. Its leader was a man named Xiaoyan, who possessed extraordinarily powerful fire-based abilities and was revered as the Flame Emperor. It's him. The intelligence brought back by the reconnaissance team reveals that Xiaoyan is an extremely domineering and aggressive individual. Those who submit prosper, while those who resist perish, with an iron-fisted approach. He swiftly consolidated all survivor factions in Linjiang City within an extremely short period, establishing a strictly hierarchical dictatorship. Anyone daring to defy him would be reduced to ashes by his flames. He's expanding outward and has already swallowed up several small bases. Captain Chen placed a report in front of me, his expression grave. At this rate, within a month, his sphere of influence will border ours. 2 tigers cannot share one mountain. I looked at the description of Xiaoyan in the report, a slight smile curling at the corners of my mouth. This is his way of declaring war on me. Your Majesty Su, what should we do? If he wants war, then war it shall be. I stood up and walked to the enormous floor-to-ceiling window, gazing out at the kingdom I had built with my own hands. Issue my orders. Prepare all troops for battle. I know that this battle with Xiaoyan is inevitable. This is not just a war between 2 bases, but a showdown between him and me. 2 kings. The victor will unify the entire South. The loser will be left with nothing. I feel not the slightest fear, but rather a hint of anticipation. In my past life, I was merely an insignificant ant struggling desperately to survive in the apocalypse, but in this life, I shall be a player myself, personally participating in this game of vying for supremacy over the world. The war horn will soon sound. Xiaoyan's army arrived faster than I had imagined. They didn't come swarming like a horde of zombies but formed elite squads of superpowered individuals, constantly harassing and attacking our borders like sharp blades. Their tactics were flexible and varied, with seamless coordination, especially those fire-based superpowered individuals who caused us considerable trouble. Although my zombie legion was vast in number, it still faced limitations when dealing with large-scale fire attacks. For a time, the battle reached a stalemate. Xiaoyan also seemed to find my zombie army quite troublesome and refrained from launching an all-out attack recklessly. Along the border, we engaged in one small-scale tug-of-war after another. Both sides suffered heavy losses, yet neither could gain the upper hand. I know this can't go on like this. There's only one way to break the deadlock. To catch the thief, first catch the king. I've decided to personally meet this so-called Flame Emperor. 14. This is a crazy decision. Everyone is against it. Your Majesty Su, this is too dangerous. Xiaoyan's base is a lion's den. If you go alone, what if? Captain Chen was sweating profusely with anxiety. There are no what ifs, I interrupted him. Only I can get close to him without being detected. My zombie body is my best disguise. After calming everyone at the base, I temporarily handed over command to Captain Chen. Then, on a dark and windy night, I quietly left the base alone and embarked on the journey to Linjiang City. The defenses in Linjiang City were even tighter than I had imagined. On the towering city walls, there's an awakened sentinel every 10 meters. Beyond the walls roam mutated beasts they've tamed through special methods. Any creature that approaches without permission will be torn to shreds instantly, but this can't stop me. I effortlessly blended into a wandering horde of zombies outside the city walls, shuffling slowly until I reached the base of the towering fortifications. Then, under the cover of darkness, I scaled the dozens of meters high wall like a gecko, silently evading all sentries' sightlines and successfully infiltrating the blaze base. Inside the base, security was equally tight. Squads of patrolling soldiers moved with grim determination, weapons in hand, their expressions stern. The entire base was enveloped in a high-pressure and tense atmosphere, based on the intelligence provided by the reconnaissance team. I cautiously avoided patrols and made my way toward the core area of the base, Xiaoyan's residence. It was a standalone villa, situated at the highest point of the base, with no other buildings nearby, offering an extremely open view. Outside the villa, guards were stationed every few steps, all powerful superhumans. Sneaking in unnoticed is almost impossible. I didn't force my way in. Instead, I waited patiently for an opportunity in the shadows outside the villa. Late at night, the study room in the villa was still lit. A tall and straight figure was silhouetted against the curtain. It must be Xiaoyan. I was pondering how to get inside when suddenly, the villa's door opened. A scantily clad woman, carrying a tray, swayed her hips as she entered the villa. The guard didn't stop her. It seemed she was bringing Xiaoyan a midnight snack. The opportunity has arrived. With a swift movement, I followed the woman and, just as she was about to close the door, slipped inside like a shadow. The interior of the villa was decorated with simple yet luxurious elegance. I held my breath, hugging the shadows along the wall. Following the woman all the way to the study door on the second floor, the woman knocked on the door. "Come in," came a deep, magnetic male voice. The woman pushed the door open and entered. I took the opportunity to dart behind a decorative suit of armor by the door. Through the gaps in the armor, I finally caught sight of the man's true appearance. He was wearing a black silk robe, slightly open at the collar, revealing his well-built chest. He reclined lazily on the sofa, holding a book in his hand, his godlike handsome face bearing an air of nonchalance and indifference. But those deep black eyes gleamed with the sharp intensity of an eagle's gaze. What a man Xiaoyan is, truly lives up to his reputation. "Lord Flame Emperor, you've worked hard. I've prepared bird's nest soup for you." The woman placed the tray on the table, her voice dripping with sweetness as she nearly pressed herself against Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan didn't even lift an eyelid, merely uttering a single word coldly, "Scram." The woman's face stiffened, but unwilling to give up, she leaned in closer again. "Emperor Yan, do I need to repeat myself?" Xiaoyan's voice turned icy, and the temperature in the air suddenly rose several degrees. A small flame flickered at his fingertips. The woman was so terrified that her face turned pale, scrambling out in panic. In the study, only Xiaoyan and I remained. He set down the book, picked up the bowl of bird's nest soup, and took a leisurely sip. Then, he suddenly spoke, his gaze precisely landing on the armor where I was hiding. "Been watching for so long, aren't you tired?" I was startled. He actually noticed me, when I thought my entire process was flawless, not leaking even the slightest hint of my presence. "Since I've been discovered, there's no point in hiding any longer." I stepped out boldly from behind the armor. "Flame Emperor Xiaoyan, truly living up to your reputation," I said calmly, looking at him. Xiaoyan showed a flicker of surprise upon seeing me, but quickly regained his composure. He sized me up from head to toe, a playful smile curling at the corner of his lips. "You're the first to infiltrate my place without making a sound, so you're the so-called zombie queen, Suqing." "That's me." I nodded. "Interesting." He stood up and walked toward me step by step, coming into my territory all alone. "Should I call you brave or foolish?" A scorching heat rushed toward my face. I could feel the air around his body subtly distorting. This man was even stronger than I had imagined. "I came here to discuss a deal with you." I met his gaze without flinching. "Oh," he raised an eyebrow. "I'm curious. What do you want to talk about?" "Let's call a truce." I got straight to the point. "You and I join forces, divide the world between North and South. How about it?" Upon hearing this, Xiaoyan suddenly burst into laughter. He laughed so hard he doubled over, as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. "Divide the world." He stepped closer to me, his towering height casting an overwhelming presence. "Suqing, have you misunderstood something?" He reached out his hand, gently lifting my chin with his fingertips. Their warmth was startlingly intense. "In this world, there shall be only one king." His dark eyes burned with blazing ambition and fire, "and that person can only be me. As for you," he leaned close to my ear and spoke in a voice only the two of us could hear, enunciating each word clearly. Either submit to me and become my woman, or turn to ashes along with your zombie army. 15. Domineering, forceful, leaving no room for argument. That's Xiaoyan. I looked at his handsome face so close to mine, inhaled the faint scent of ambergris emanating from him, and smiled. Xiaoyan, have you also misunderstood something? I raised my hand and grasped his wrist, which was tilting my chin. The icy, zombie-like body temperature made him freeze momentarily. Do you really think you've got me figured out? The next second, my psychic energy erupted from within me without reservation. Countless spikes condensed from psychic energy viciously stabbed into his brain. This is my strongest attack, silent, undetectable, and impossible to defend against. Even an evolved zombie wouldn't survive the strike. Yet, Xiaoyan merely let out a muffled groan, swayed slightly, and astonishingly managed to endure it. A flicker of pain flashed through his eyes, but it was overshadowed by shock and anger. Mental attack. He gritted his teeth, violently shaking off my hand as flames erupted violently around him. In an instant, the entire study was transformed into a sea of fire. I had been prepared. The moment he erupted, I swiftly retreated, crashing through the window and leaping out, trying to run. Xiaoyan roared furiously, transforming into a streak of fire as he gave chase. A battle befitting kings erupted abruptly in the skies above the blazing flame base. I pushed my speed to the limit, darting through the night, while Xiaoyan pursued relentlessly like a blazing meteor. Countless fireballs, firewalls, and fire dragons came rushing toward me like a tidal wave. I manipulated my psychic energy, continuously disrupting him while using the surrounding environment to evade and engage. We fought from inside the city to outside, leaving devastation in our wake. The entire blaze base was stirred into chaos by our battle. Countless people rushed out of their rooms, staring dumbfounded at the two figures entangled in the sky. This battle had no victor. My mental energy was severely depleted, and Xiaoyan's abilities were nearly exhausted as well. As the first light of dawn appeared on the horizon, we finally stopped, facing each other from a distance, panting heavily. None of us can do anything to the other. Su Qing. Xiaoyan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, his gaze at me filled with endless complexity. I take back what I said before. You are worthy to share this world with me, but I have one condition. What condition? I asked. Marry me. He looked at me, his dark pupils burning with a light fiercer than flames. Be my queen, and together we shall reign over this apocalyptic world. I was stunned. I had imagined countless possibilities, but never this one. Gazing at his face filled with absolute determination, I suddenly found it somewhat amusing. This man truly is domineeringly adorable. I didn't answer him immediately. I just gave him a deep look, then turned and disappeared into the morning light. Returning to the base, I locked myself in my room and thought for a long time. Marrying Xiaoyan was indeed the optimal solution at present. The merger of the two most powerful bases is enough to handle any future crisis. As for him and me, one commanding the undead and the other mastering flames, we are indeed a match made in heaven. It's just that, I can never forget the despair and agony of being pushed into a horde of zombies by Jiangxi in my past life. I have long lost all trust in men and so-called love, but Xiaoyan and Jiangxi are different. He is powerful, confident, and forthright. His ambitions and desires are laid bare for all to see. He has never stooped to deceit or manipulation with hypocritical words. Perhaps I could try trusting him just this once. 3 days later, Xiaoyan's marriage proposal procession arrived at my base in grand fashion. He brought dowry gifts enough to fill an entire warehouse, gold, jewels, rare mutated crystal cores. His sincerity was undeniable. He walked up to me personally, knelt on one knee, and presented me with a ring crafted from the purest fire element crystal core. Su Qing, marry me. He repeated the words from that night in front of everyone from both bases. I looked at the undisguised possessiveness and burning emotion in his eyes and remained silent for a long time. In the end, I reached out my hand. Our wedding took place a month later, grand and solemn. I wore a black wedding dress, and he wore a white suit. In the presence of all the survivors, we exchanged rings. I became his queen, and he became my king. Life after marriage was unexpectedly harmonious. We managed the base together, researched supernatural abilities together, and fought side by side across the lands. He taught me how to wield flames more effectively, while I showed him how to use psychic energy to calm raging mutated beasts. We were the closest of comrades and the most perfectly matched partners. He would domineeringly encircle me in his arms, declaring me his sole possession. He would also clumsily massage my shoulders and back when I grew weary from handling government affairs. My frozen heart seemed to gradually thaw amidst this blazing fire. A year later, I became pregnant. When I told him the news, this once arrogant flame emperor actually stood there dumbfounded like a fool for a long time, then suddenly picked me up and spun around wildly. Watching his ecstatic expression, I couldn't help but laugh. Perhaps, being reborn once Heaven hasn't treated me too harshly after all. Not only did it allow me to take revenge, but it also gave me a brand new, hopeful future. Xiaoyan and I, along with our soon-to-be-born child, will together witness the birth of this new world, and I, Su Qing, am no longer that fool who humbled herself to the dust for love. I am the empress of this apocalyptic era, the one and only legend, the end.